Yes.
Welcome, welcome,
Look,
welcome, welcome. Good
hey,
to see you. Good to
thank
see
you.
you. Look, let me just do a quick intro and we're going to get started here. My name is
Okay.
Kate here with Renew Refresh Reset Your Life, and we are talking about the book today. And the book is I See Greatness in You by Larry Ragland. And I got to tell you, it's a really good book. I told Pastor Ragland that I started reading it, and I didn't want to do this interview until I got a chance to read it all. I didn't get all the way through, but I got up to page 157. So I've been doing some serious reading because I had to
Yes,
prepare for some other authors that are going to be coming on.
sure.
But Pastor Ragland, he is the founder of Solid Rock Church. He has been in the ministry about 35 years, 30, 35,
Hey, I ain't that old. About 30.
about
Oh,
30. Okay,
yeah,
okay, okay.
you're making me a little bit older.
You're still younger than me, right?
Yeah,
So,
well, I don't know.
I'm thinking so. And so he's written this awesome book called I See Greatness in You. And I'm going to tell you off the bat, when I first started reading this book, and I'm going to let you tell everybody about the book, and I think I told you this when I sent you an email. I started reading in the preface. It says, "Do you see it?" And it says, "He sees greatness in you too. It's time for you to see it also. Do you see it? You will." And already on page 17, before I even got to chapter 1, I wrote in here, at this point, I want to not read this book for fear of the range of emotions that I
Mm,
won't be able to contain.
wow.
But I'm going to read anyway. And
Mm,
so I was glad that I did. And when I met you at the library and I stopped at your table and I saw the title of this book, I See Greatness in You, I was fascinated by it. Okay, first of all, because I see titles of book and my mind just kind of goes in one direction about the possibilities of what that can be. And
right.
so anytime you're talking about seeing greatness in somebody, I
Yeah.
expect something magnificent, but I wasn't prepared for what I was reading. I really wasn't prepared for that. So I'm going to let you tell everybody what the book is about, and then we're just going to have a discussion about it. I don't do a lot of pre-planning.
Okay.
I let our conversation guide the interview. If that's okay with you, that's the direction.
Sure. Absolutely.
All right, so tell us about the book.
Well, the premise of the book, obviously, the name is I See Greatness in You. And like you said, a lot of people, when they first hear that, they think, okay, it's a self-help book trying to help you find your greatness. Like so many books are out there, nothing against those books. But as you know, by reading what you've read of the book, it is by no way a typical find your best self
Right.
type book. I mean, that is certainly, hopefully, our guide. The book will guide you in that direction. But the title, the 5 words, is based on probably the most monumental moment of my life. And really, of the book, the only part of the book that I've told publicly for many, many years. The rest of the book, probably 75, even probably close to 90% of the book, I've never spoken publicly of ever until I wrote the book, because of just the intimate nature of the book itself. But I was raised in a very abusive home. Detail in the book how my father was physically abusive to me and to my mother, verbally abusive, certainly. Many, many events that I cover in the book, very few compared to what I could have covered, but that was not my purpose of the book. My purpose of the book was not to write a book to defame my father by
Right.
no means. But I had to use a couple examples, and some of the examples was, he put a 12 gauge double barrel 12 gauge shotgun in his mouth. And when I was 10 years old, and put my finger on the triggers and begged me to blow his brains out. I hate to get graphic here on this video, but this is the detail. This is the rawness of this book. And I would cry and I would say, "Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this?" And my father would speak down to me and would say things, that, I was a bum, I was worthless, and so forth. And you probably know, as everybody on this video knows, that you tell a kid and you traumatize a kid like that, and that's just a microcosm of my childhood. And you tell him that he's never going to be anything, he's a loser, he's a liar.
Mhm.
That's what he's going to end up being, and that's
Right.
what happened to me. And so I spent most of my childhood that I painstakingly went back through for this book, childhood, teenage years, young adult life, into just a scarred man. I was a scarred boy, and I became a scarred man. I had been dropped and broken. And what is typical is that when you are that deeply hurt on the inside, you learn to master the ability to cover it up.
Mhm.
That's the problem. Most people don't get help because they've so long learned how to
Mask it.
to manage it, to micromanage it, to convince everybody in the room that they're okay. And typically, when you see somebody that's been scarred that way, they're usually the loudest person, they're the funniest person. They overcompensate so much to hide the pain. And that's what I became. And I became the jock in high school. I became the popular guy. It made everybody laugh. And, I was just able to cover up the real me. But the real me was really becoming my father. I was a liar. I was deceptive. I was disrespectful to my mother. I was becoming really a bad person, but nobody knew it. I had learned how to hide that. And so the premise of the book is I got all the way up to I just came out of high school a couple of years. I was 21, and I convinced the most beautiful girl in the world. You met Sandy.
Yeah.
She's my wife now, 29 years. And at that time, she was my girlfriend. She was 19 years old, just fresh out of high school, just a baby herself, just a little girl, basically, is what I call her. But shy, introverted. She's not shy, introverted anymore, by the way. But she was back then. And so I convinced her to marry me. And so in my mind, I thought, okay, I have found a way to find this wonderful girl.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make something of myself. I'm not going to be what my dad said I was going to be. But the truth is, I was already that. And I had really deceived her, lied to her, and so forth. And so the premise of chapter 1 that takes you, and then I begin to take you through the journey of how I got there, was the day that all of it came crumbling down. The house of cards comes crumbling down, and the real me is revealed. All the lies, all the deception, all the cover up came out and in front of her. And I realized at that point that the greatest failure of my life was the fact that there was no way that I was going to be able to keep this girl. She was the girl of my dreams, but I wouldn't expect any girl to stay with the person that I was. And
Right.
so when she found that out, I'd been arrested, and outside of the courthouse, she stood there, and I had to walk out of the courthouse and face her. And I begged her to walk away. I begged her to keep the ring, walk away. I said, Sandy, I'll never speak evil of you. It's the right thing to do. It's the wrong thing to do to stay with me. And I said, please go. And a little 19-year-old girl grabbed my hand, and she said, I'm not going anywhere. And I said, Sandy, why? It makes no sense. Why would you not leave? And she said something that changed my life. She held my hand and said, because when I look into your eyes, I see greatness in you.
And here we are.
And here we are. And so that's a long answer. My other answers won't be that long.
That's okay. No, that's okay. That's okay. Because I want to touch on a couple of things that you said here. Going back to, I mean, I know how it is, or imagine how it can be when people drum something into your head and you say that's what you become. Yeah. But you know, as you're talking, and I see that when I'm reading the book, and as you're talking, I'm hearing that differently, because you say that's what you become, or is that what you thought you became? Because the real you,
yeah,
that really wasn't what you became.
Yeah, that's right. You're exactly right. Because, see, here's the premise of the book, and throughout the book, I tell my story from birth. After chapter 1, I take you through all. But the unique thing is, I take you about every 2 or 3 paragraphs. I'll share my story. Then I'll share, some really famous Bible characters, right, and flaws that they have, and how God used those things. What I want to show people is just like in these famous Bible characters, whether it be Samson, whether it be
let's start with Adam and Eve.
Adam and Eve, yeah. Even in Adam and Eve, that's the original greatness. They were formed and created in the image of God. But right, yet they allowed someone else, which was the enemy, the devil, to convince them that what God said about them was not enough.
Right.
That it was not the truth, basically. They really accused God of being a liar, and the devil did. The devil's like, what did he say about this fruit? And then he comes back and says, well, let me tell you what he really meant when he said that. And man allowed himself to listen to what the enemy told them that God really meant. So see, when God made man, he made us in his image.
Right.
And in his likeness, he breathed life into us. And when he did, he breathed greatness into us because he's great. So we are created in his image. Therefore, inside of every one of us is greatness. But yet we allow our environment, our circumstances, the things that people have said and spoken over our life we believe that more than what we believe in God. And so when she saw that greatness, what a powerful point that you just made. You know, I've done several interviews and nobody has said what you just said. That was excellent, because the truth is what she saw in me was the truth.
What's
What
the
she saw in
truth?
me was a lie. I
Yeah.
had absolutely convinced myself that it was impossible to beat what she said to be true. But
Mm-hmm.
words have such power
They
that
do.
those 5 words, when she said those 5 words to me, that 19-year-old girl spoke the voice of God into my life, and I literally felt something transform inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
Something, it was like something triggered inside of me. And I stood there just sort of speechless for a minute and said, "What did you just say?" And she said, "I see greatness in you."
Right,
And
right,
I
right.
couldn't believe it. I'm like, how in the midst of what you just found out about me, could you see greatness in me? And I've asked her time and time again, Sandy, what made you say that? You'd never say anything like that before. And this is what she always says: "Larry, it wasn't me. It just came out of my mouth. It was God.
Yeah.
God used me to say to you what he needed you to hear."
Right, right, right. Well, look, hanging right here with Adam and Eve for a minute, because I wrote a note here. So Adam and Eve, they discovered that they were naked, like they know what that is, right? Okay.
Right. Yeah. Come
Like
on.
they don't really know what it is. So I got here listening to other people can rob us of our greatness.
Mm.
Okay. And so when you were talking about you never told this story before, and just reading and looking at that, and then, so there's that shame factor. All of a sudden there's shame.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And so is that what it has been about you before you told your story? Was it shame that you were feeling, or just,
No, part of it wasn't necessarily shame for me, which for some people that read the book, obviously it is, because they're ashamed of the things that they've done and so forth. But most of my story that was so painful dealt with things that was done to me, not things that I did someone else.
Okay.
But the reason that I did not publicly speak of it is because so much of it, for those that read the book, understand that a lot of it has to do with my mom, and things that that caused me to be brought into the world, and
Mhm,
try
mhm.
to figure that out. But out of honor and respect for my mother and honor and respect for my family, so many things in my family that I knew was going to be affected by this, and I thought I can't really tell this story because I don't want to in any way dishonor my mother's. She's still here with us alive. I don't want people questioning her integrity, those
Right,
things. So I always thought that one day I would write this book when my mother was with the Lord. Well, my mother's still here with us. So,
right, right, right.
and for 20 years, I've been saying I was going to write this book, but I knew the moment that I did, not only would it open up a flood of emotions of things that I need to deal with again, some doors that I really hadn't even closed yet that would need to be closed. But I also knew that it was going to open up things for my mom, for my brother, and for other people that's in the story. So, I just, for years as a pastor, I've wanted to share, hey, I've been there, I've gone through this kind of pain, but out of respect and honor, that's the reason that I didn't. But can I touch on one thing about Adam and Eve, what you were
Yeah,
saying?
yeah.
My folks that are on here and people from Solid Rock Church know that my favorite subject in the world to preach on is the Garden of Eden. I always come back to it no matter what sermon series I'm preaching. I always go back there, because if you really want to understand the nature of God, the heart of God, the will of God, the future of the kingdom, everything about God and his desire for man can be summed up in that garden, because
Mm,
he didn't make one single thing in that garden by accident. He was very, very intentional. And the Garden of Eden was perfect. Man was created in his image, and before man messed it up, man was the way God wanted him to be. He saw himself, she saw herself the way God saw them, because they were covered in the glory of God. And as
mhm.
long as they were covered in the glory of God, they could walk with God, they could talk with God. There was no issue. The issue of nakedness was not an issue because it wasn't anything to it. They
Right.
were clothed in the glory of God. But the moment that they began to listen and be defined by their environment and by
Yeah,
the mouths of others is when it all got messed up.
yeah. But that's so strong though, because you know the person that is enforcing that on you, so to speak, they know the power of that.
Yeah.
they know the power of those words. They know the power of their influence, okay?
Yeah.
We're smart people, okay, but we don't get it when it's happening. Okay, so I want to say a couple of things too here about your family. Okay, not in great detail, but as relates to the book, because you say you've been wanting to write this book for 20 years.
Right.
Has your mother known for 20 years that you wanted to write this book?
Has who known?
Has your mother known for 20 years that you wanted to write this book?
Not really. She's always known that I've never shared the story, but I think in her mind she never dreamed that her son would ever write a book, because I never dreamed I'd write a book.
Right.
So I never even said to her, "Hey, Mom, one day I'm going to write a book about this," because I always, just like I said earlier, out of respect, it would have caused her to say, "Oh, that's going to tell all my business and stuff." So because of that, I never really went there. But the reason that I did is a few years ago, I was in the presence of the Lord, just worshiping God, and God spoke to me and said, "You cannot wait any longer. It's time to tell your story." But because of my commitment that I made to not dishonor my mother, and under the guidance of my pastor, I went to my mother and I explained it to her. I said, "Mom, I'm not going to make this decision without your blessing." And we cried for a couple of hours together, and she emphatically said, "Son, I'm not proud of some of the things that happened in my life, but I'm very proud of what come out of it. You,
Right.
That I'm proud of you. So it's time for you to tell our story." So I had her blessing. I went to my brother. I got my blessings of my brother, even though it didn't really impact him as much as it did me. But I still knew that the moment I tell the story, it opens up questions to him as well.
It does.
So I had the blessings of both of them, and after that, I just said, there's nothing holding me back. I've been released, so I wrote it.
So you wrote the book, and so everybody's story is out now. The story of your family is out. So how is your mother and your brother feeling about that now? Are they in any way relieved that it's out?
I think so. Yeah, I think so, because you can sort of more freely just sort of feel like take a deep breath. It's not like anything that myself, my mother, my brother, or people in my family had anything to hide, because most of the things that I talk about was not their fault, but
Right.
it was still a secret. And, everybody feels like, once you've been holding something inside for that long, and it's an incredible story. I'm not saying it because it's my story. It is an unbelievable story that if I didn't live it, I wouldn't even believe that it's even true, some of the things that happened. So it's a story that needed to be told. And so now it's a sort of sense of relief, but to get it out. But it's also been a huge blessing as we start getting testimonies from all over the country of people telling me, "Hey, this is changing my life. I'm dealing with things, I'm closing doors. I'm seeing myself in a way I never saw myself." So that right there just, brings joy and just a release of knowing, hey, it's a good thing that this is out.
Absolutely. Because one of the first things that you said when we met, you started talking about the book. You said, "Yeah, this is my story, but it's not just my story."
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Your story.
Yeah, right. It's a lot of people's story. It's definitely is my story, not in that the abuse that you had gone through, but simply the doubt and doubt in myself. Okay. I want to touch on when you talk about Samson for a little bit, and how, let me see, hang on one second, I got my notes here, and how his gift wasn't what he thought his gift was. I mean, he thought his strength was his gift, and that turned out not to be his gift at all, and how we often mistake what we think is our gift, and it's something totally different. So along this path, you evidently discovered your gift. Okay. And I'm not going to even assume that gift will be ministry, because it could be something else. Is that correct?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So what is that? What is that gift? What is your gift? I mean, Samson discovered his. What is yours?
Well, my gift is exhortation. I mean, I'm on a mission for the rest of my life. I say in the book, you may not have a Sandy, but I want to be your Sandy. I want this book to be your Sandy. I am on a mission to get this word and this message of the greatness of God, creating the DNA of God, the greatness and the potential to help people unlock the hidden potential that's within them in everybody that I meet. So my mission is, I've been pastoring our church now for 24 years. My wife and I have been in the ministry for 28 plus years. So obviously my calling in life is to shepherd, to pastor, and to minister. But of course, this has unleashed another gift in me of writing. But my heart is just exhortation. My heart is to help people see that they are not what the world says they are. So if I could sum up anything in my ministry, it's that.
Yeah. Well, I almost hate to say this, but and this is related to me because I often can see maybe not necessarily greatness, but great potential in
Yeah,
other people, and yet not see any of the potential in myself. And I
that's
haven't
typical.
gone through anything that as devastating as you've gone through, but I always think that other people have greater potential than I do. And so I guess my question is, what is it about somebody external to ourselves that
Mhm.
allow us to see the potential in other people when they don't see it themselves?
Well, okay. Well, it's just like even prayer. It's so much easier to pray for someone else than it is to pray for yourself. You can believe for somebody else's miracle, but it's hard for you to believe for your own miracle. That's a pattern of humanity. But then think about this. When you are seeing the potential in someone else,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to process through the funnel and through the lens of all the mistakes that they've made, of all the things that's ever been said about them. You are looking through the lens of your eyes and your perspective of them. If even the ones that you see
I'm
great,
jaded.
yeah, exactly. So when you see greatness in that other person and you can see their potential in that other person, if there was a way for you to jump inside their mind and their brain, you would never see it. Because the reason you have a hard time seeing in yourself is because every time you think the word greatness, every time you think of your potential, it is always filtered through mistakes, failures, people hurting you, stabbing you in the back, telling you you're a loser and a liar, being dropped and broken by someone else. The only way any person can truly ever see the greatness that is within them, it has to be filtered through Jesus Christ. I'm unashamed to say that. I don't know who all's watching this right now, but I got the opportunity. I'm going to share it.
I'm with you.
Okay. All right. So that is, people can see, people can be great without God. I understand that they can do great things without God and have huge potential. But the question was, how can I see in myself what I see in others? I
Mm-hmm.
I am of the belief that you always use the illustration in our church and where I minister. I think about, you buy your kids a little toy wagon and you put the wagon together, and men are notorious for not looking at instructions. So, what we do is we look at the picture. We look at the picture of
Right.
the wagon and we think to ourselves, well, that's nothing. I can do that. I can make this look just like that. So we put the wagon together and it looks exactly like the picture, perfect, side by side, until we start trying to use the wagon. And when we start trying to turn the wagon, we find something is not right. We miss the piece. And that happened to me when one of my children was very little, and I couldn't understand it because you would look at the picture and look at the wagon and they were identical. But what I realized is I had missed one step, and I had to tear the whole wagon back apart,
Yeah.
fix that one thing so it would work. So I've preached many times since then that if you want to learn how a wagon works and how it is supposed to operate to its fullest potential, you need to look at the manual, because the manual is made by the one that created the wagon.
Right.
So we go out, we send our kids out to try to, quote, find themselves,
Right.
but they're trying to find themselves in the world that did not create them.
Right.
The only way you can really be who God's called you to be and operate the way you're supposed to operate is you got to go back to the manual, to the one that created
Yeah.
you.
You gotta go. Look, you gotta go back to the manual, and not only even before you try to test the bicycle or the wagon, whatever. Your first clue ought to be the 50 screws that are left on the floor, right?
Yeah, come on. That's a truth. You're like, okay, mate, are these extra? I know they're supposed to go somewhere.
That's the truth. That's the truth. So, but yeah, so everybody needs that guidebook, because as I was reading this story, and so you talk a little bit about your story, then you relate a story in the Bible about something similar in the Bible, and I thought, God, when I think about myself, I wish I could go to that story, that relates to me in that
Yeah.
way.
right.
And no matter how much, I can't even say that I've ever written the Bible through and through. And
Yeah,
I'm one of those people that'll, sometimes it's just situational, which just gives me a snippet for that moment.
sure.
Okay, without knowing the backstory and being able to put it all together. But I was reading, I said, God, I wish I could, you tell a little about your story and then you go to the Bible and talk about someone in the Bible who, that we can relate to put your
Yes.
story together. So, I wish I could see that in my own life. But so let's talk about for a minute, because it's well into this chapter, and I don't know it be all the way through the end if you talk, because I'm at 157, I'm still seeing signs of this, either the abuse or, the remnants of it. So the question is, uh, are you totally beyond that? Are there some remnants left of that? Is this a lifelong thing that
Yeah.
have to be conquered and kept in check?
You know, when somebody is dropped and broken and scarred, the scars, just like if you cut yourself really bad and you have to get stitches, you go on with your life. You have no remnants of that whatsoever, but you look down, the scar's still there.
Mm-hmm.
And the scar tells a story. You say, well, where'd you get that from? And you can say, well, when I was, 13 years old, I had a bike wreck, or something like that. You're not
Yeah.
hurting from that bike wreck anymore, but you still see the scar there. So the scar of my past will always be with me. It's sort of like there's a story in the Bible where Jacob wrestles with an angel. Some people believe it was actually God they wrestled with. And when he said, I'm not going to let you go till you bless me. And then God touched his leg and spoke a blessing over. His name was changed from Jacob to Israel. The Bible said for the rest of his life, because of that encounter, he walked with a limp. And that limp always reminded him, even though he's not that man anymore, it reminded him of the day that happened.
That
So,
happened.
so there are things in my life that even at age 50 now, that it could be a movie, it could be a song, it could be a message, it could be a conversation with my own children that will just trigger an emotional pain from
Mm-hmm.
even from 40 years ago. But I'm well beyond it. And the reason I'm well beyond it is because, and I detail in the book later towards the end of the book, as you finish it, you'll see that God opened some miraculous doors for me to speak to, confront the situation, and to close the doors with integrity and with character on both ends. And, God just healed my heart. He healed my heart, released me, but it took me forgiving them. I had to release it.
Right.
As long as, I was a pastor and I was a father of two small children before I finally truly forgave my father. And when I did, it was like 1,000 pounds lifted off of me. Because a lot of times, the person that hurts you, they done moved on with their life. They ain't thinking about you. And you over here killing yourself over what
Yeah.
they did. And
Right.
they done moved on. They ain't thinking about that. And
Right.
he done moved on with his life. And I'm sitting
That's
over
right.
here still
That's right.
dying. So
So,
yeah.
and when you
But
say your father, you're talking about your father and your stepfather, both?
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Both of them.
Yeah. Oh
Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
So, and so you say you were already a pastor and you were still dealing with this before you came to grips with it. So, how does that work from the pulpit? I mean, you're preaching, you're a man of God, you're a man of faith, and people think that of course we're human, everybody knows that, but that's pretty deep for you to be in a pulpit preaching about God, and how great and wonderful He is, and He truly is. But
Yeah.
having that secret, from the being a pastor, is there any different feeling from being a pastor in your flock or your sheep or whoever, however you want to say that, in
Yeah.
feeling that, but yet
Well,
preaching a different story?
yes. Well, being a pastor is almost like being, some would call it a spiritual father. So that's another thing I talk about in the book is the time in my life when I realized that God was calling me to be a father, not just to my children, but to many spiritual sons and daughters.
Mm-hmm.
And I cried out to God, how can I be a father when I don't even know what a father is? And I never had a father to show me what a father is. And God took me to the scripture that said, I'll be a father to the fatherless. And
Mm-hmm.
so, So he was my father, but but then he brought men of God in my life, just spiritual men of God, great men of God that poured into my life and helped become father figures to me. But the answer to your question is there was, it since I finally shared this, obviously this has only been just a few years, it has changed my ministry. It has changed the way I preach. I feel more free because you can only imagine for years and years and years I'd be preaching on a subject that spoke directly to this.
Right.
And I would think, okay, if I could only tell this,
right,
it would help a lot of people. And I always felt restrained. I always felt like I'm not being able to fully help people like I want to help people. But of course now, they ain't nothing I ain't holding nothing back now. So it just released me to be able to share, because when people relate to stories, they relate to you, not necessarily to your ability to preach or teach or even speak, leadership or whatever. It is the story. It is the encounter of how this product or whatever you're selling
right,
has changed your life that causes them to want that product. I share all the time in the church, people are afraid to share their faith. And I tell them, I said, look, I've been in sales. I've owned multiple businesses over the history of my ministry. I started businesses, sold businesses. One thing I learned about sales is simply this. If you can ever get this one premise, this is how you sell something. You just grab, I got my book here, but it ain't just my book. I'm talking about anything. I see greatness in you.com. No. Okay. So look, let's just say this is a widget to use in the kitchen. And this is the way you sell that widget. Well, let me show everybody this new invention that I got. You may not think this is for you. All I'm going to tell you is simply this. Before this thing was invented, I used to struggle in the kitchen all the time. It took me an hour to make this particular meal. But when I found this widget here, that hour went to 5 minutes. And I'm going to tell you something. Ever since I've been using this widget, I have never struggled in the kitchen. So here's where I was. Here's what happened when I was introduced to this product, and here's how my life has changed since then. So when I'm talking about my story, I can tell you that before I was able to share my story, I was only limited. So far, I could share the gospel. But those stories, when I began to start sharing these stories, I'm going around and on the book tour now, and some places it's been in book tour, books signing, and some places have been places where I spoke. When I start sharing this story, it has been incredible how people, kids, adults are just running up and just telling testimonies and crying and weeping and saying, I've never shared this publicly before, but because you shared that, I now feel like I can share what has happened to me. And that itself has been the greatest thing that's ever happened from this book.
I get that. I don't know if you are you familiar with the comedies come on Benson. That's probably
yeah, I remember Benson.
Yeah. So I always compare myself to the governor. You're going to see the stories. And that's how I make people understand. I don't get sick of the stories, right? But that's how I can make you understand where I'm coming from. But I'm going to back up just a little bit, because you're talking about when you're preaching and you might be talking about something that was directly related to your story that you hadn't revealed yet, and so you had to be somewhat restrained. Did you ever feel somewhat hypocritical?
Not necessarily hypocritical, because I never gave any kind of advice or whatever that countered what I feel. Only time I would probably feel hypocritical maybe is if I said something like, you need to feel free to share what's ever on your heart with people and not be afraid, because that would have been hypocritical on me. But I think instead of the word hypocritical, it was more feeling like I was falling short of my ability to help people. I just felt like one day I'm going to be, and I would say things like, I would say, y'all, one day if I could ever tell y'all what I'm in my mind right now, it would blow your mind about your pastor. There's things about your pastor you have no idea, and I want to share them with you one day. and they'd say, share it, tell us,
Look, even better, they're going next to each other, going,
Exactly. I wonder what he's talking about. I know what he's talking. Oh yeah, I went through all of that. But,
yeah. So it's been a couple of years, and so since your story has come out, and you've been able to talk more freely about it, and I don't want you to tell, reveal anybody's story, but so the people that have read this book have discovered that they're not the person that they thought they were. Have you seen those change? I mean, those real significant changes in people.
Oh my goodness, it has been one of the most humbling experiences of my life, because when I wrote the book, when I finally decided to write the book, Sandy, my wife, she said, "Why are you writing this book?" And I said, "My purpose of writing this book, initially, this is what I thought, is I'm just writing this book for me. I just need to get this out of me finally." That's all it was. And it was about halfway through writing the book that I realized emphatically that this was bigger than me. This was this message of I see greatness in you is really a movement that God is going to use in so many different ways. So yeah, I'm so humbled to see the change, not just from people in my church that I know personally, but I'm getting messages on a weekly basis from people that I've never met in my life. Got a message the other day from a guy that said, "I am a trucker. I live in another state. I've never been to your church. I've never met you. But another trucker had this book called I See Greatness in You. And he met me at a truck stop and he gave me this book. And he said, I just finished reading this book and my life has been completely changed. Everything about me, the way I see myself has completely changed. I had to find you on the internet to tell you how much this book has changed my life." I mean, I'm just crying like a baby reading it.
I want to stand up right now and do a happy dance.
It is amazing. I'll tell you another quick story is this one just blew my mind. A pastor friend of mine was walking to my car one day to get a copy of my book. And he said, "Man, I got to tell you what happened to me this week." He said, I'm doing business. He said, "I have a ministry where I help ex-cons who have come out of prison to try to rehabilitate their life and get them a home." He said, "I'll help them get in that home." And so he went in and told me about the ministry. He said, "But I'm very, very strict about when I meet with these gentlemen, I let them know I'm going to help you, but you got to be studious and be at all these meetings with me and all that." He said, so we're at our final meeting and I'm waiting in the restaurant and he knows if he shows up late, I'm walking away. I'm not going to, because I'm not going to waste my time on it. And he said 5 minutes turned to 10 minutes, turned to 15 minutes. And he said, this guy's not showing. And he said, I walked out of the restaurant. This is a pastor friend of mine telling me this here in Birmingham. He said, I'm leaving. And this ex-con, this gentleman runs up to him and says, please don't leave. Please don't leave. And he said, I'm gone. He said, because you know how, he goes, listen, I have been here at this restaurant for almost an hour. He said, I have been sitting in my car. Somebody gave me a book. And he said, it's something about greatness or something. It's got an iceberg on it. And he said, are you talking about I See Greatness in You? He said, yeah, that's it. He said, that's my friend. That's one of my pastor friends. He said, somebody gave me this book. And he said, this book is the story of my life. And he said, I lost track of time. I've been sitting in this parking lot reading for 40 minutes. And so I was just like, God, your hands on this. This is out of my hands. This is yours. You are using this message to touch people's lives and connect with them in ways I never dreamed.
Well, I can tell you, I'm going to finish reading it, but this is kind of like one of those books that you have to read again. Yeah. I mean, you read it the first time, to just be reading, see what it's about. Then you read it the second time, you kind of take it all in, and there might be a third time where there's a life plan coming out of here some kind of way. Yeah. So I just want to thank you for writing this book. And you mentioned that you wrote the book initially for yourself, and so I've co-authored a couple of books, and everything I've written about has been therapy, really. Yeah. So that's how you start. Yeah, okay, yeah. And then somewhere through the end, you realize that this might help somebody. Okay, yeah. but it's therapy. So what's after this? Are there more books?
There is more books. I'm getting ready to work on my next one right now. I'm putting it together right now. I really, honestly, I never dreamed I'd write any more than this book. But as I'm writing this book, I began to realize that it was a calling on my life. And you know, I'm talking to a few publishers now. I'm hoping that, you know, some of the other books can be published through traditional publisher that's read the book. But either way, I've purposed to write at least 10 books. That's my purpose, at least 10 books, probably more than that, if the Lord lets me live that long. But I want to say one other thing about the book is that I don't want people to think that the book is just about my life, even though the story is based on that. And it is a powerful story in itself. But I asked God, I said, people are not just going to read the story of Larry Ragland, some guy from Birmingham. So help me to show them a way that can relate to them. And that's why we use the characters of some that are famous, some that are not so famous. Right. But when we got to chapter 10 is a teaching chapter. It is all principles that if you make it to chapter 10 and you get there, chapter 10 is, okay, these are the things that if you will do these things in your life, you'll release greatness within you. Your inner greatness. That's the subtitle. The subtitle is Unlocking Your Hidden Potential, One Man's Story, Everyone's Journey. So in chapter 10, we show upon you some simple, practical, life-changing things that if you do these things, then the greatness and the DNA that's within you, the greatness of God, has to come out. It has to be revealed. And you will see it. And that's going back to what we first started with on this interview, is that I say in chapter 10, if you have no one in your life, because you may be reading this thinking, well, that was great, but you had Sandy. I don't have a Sandy. I don't have someone like that in my life. That's what I want this book to be. About halfway through, God said, this book is going to be the Sandy of everyone that reads it. By the end of that book, they're going to see, they will see the greatness that's within them. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind, whoever reads this book from beginning to end will see the greatness that is within them.
Okay, I'll be calling you and say, Pastor Larry, guess what? I think this. Yeah.
Hey, look here. You'll have to get this.
I gotta get that.
Right,
I gotta get that. Yes, I do. So listen, we're gonna wrap it up. Show people where they can get this book and that wonderful shirt.
Oh yeah, you can get the shirt or the book. It's available where most books are sold online, but the easiest way to do it, to find the place you want to pick and go to, is just simply go to ISeeGreatnessInYou.com. ISeeGreatnessInYou.com. Or you can go to Barnes & Noble, Amazon, search for my name, Larry Ragland, or the I See Greatness in You, and you'll find it there. But most people just go to ISeeGreatnessInYou.com. It's got all the links to iTunes, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. The T-shirt is there if you want to do that. But it's all there. It's very simple to find. And I mean, it would bless me so much if this book blessed you. And shoot me a message. Let me know if it touched your life. Leave a review, whatever. But my heart is simply this. My heart is not to sell books. My heart is to touch as many people's lives as possible. I promise you, my heart is to show you that you are not what they said you are. You are not what you were raised in. You are not what the side of the tracks that you were born on does not determine who you are in God. God has called you to greatness. And I don't know if you see it, but I see it.
I'm so glad you do. Well, look, that's a wrap. I want to thank you so much for allowing me to interview you. I'm so glad that I came down there to the Author Expo that day and met you and Sandy.
Yes.
I had a wonderful conversation with you. Enjoyed very much this interview, and I hope we'll be talking again.
Absolutely.
All right, very good.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you so much. I was blessed to be here.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody, for joining.
Yes, thank y'all.